Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Mool, Dreamcrush, out January 30th on Nuclear Blast. The album has 11 tracks, 43 minutes in length, and this is the band's third full-length studio album. They are a Danish black gaze metal band. When it comes to the structure of this record, the design of the album is not restrictive. It's not rigid in the way it presents the songs, in the way it wants to develop what the overall album experience is all about. This is a record that you could easily move songs around and you don't necessarily lose the idea of the album. And this allows for a very interesting approach and a very interesting experience. I felt like the record was more about the atmosphere, the vibe, how you feel towards it, and how it makes you feel. And when you have an album that really depends on those elements in order to succeed and in order to capture the listener and capture the attention of the listener, the way the songs come together, it's less about the specific songs in the specific place, but rather the elements, the uniquenesses that they have, and how that impacts the overall atmosphere and the overall vibe of the album. So this record simplifies its processes and therefore allows the experience to be a lot more engaging, to be a lot more entertaining. Once you get into the sound, the album has incredible production. It's such a rich sounding album, super textured, allowing you to feel all of the different pieces in everything that they have to offer. It's not a one-dimensional record, even though I would say this is a very guitar-focused album. The guitar sound, while perhaps driving the record, doesn't take necessarily the spotlight on itself, song in and song out. And when it does it, it does in a very subtle way that it still doesn't make you feel like you just can only pay attention to the guitars and the guitars only, because that's all that the album has. The album has a lot more than that, even though I feel like the guitar sound overall is definitely one of the cornerstones. It's one of the pillars of the overall sound on this album. But the record presents itself, like I said, in a very simple way. Still very rich, very textured, but simple, easy to digest. Such an easy album to listen to. The production helps on that side because it makes things more palpable. It allows all the different layers and all of the different elements to be a lot easier to spot, a lot easier to detect, a lot easier to digest. Then that allows those elements to become a little bit more intricate, to become a little bit more complex, but never overcomplicating things by allowing everything to have its own separate lane in its own separate place to grow, breed, and develop. That is kind of the sound on this record. At the surface, it feels as simple as it comes, straightforward, really easy to connect with. But the more you dive into the album, the more you can find the intricacies that this record has sound-wise, and how well put together it is, how rich, how dynamic, how evolved the overall sound on this album becomes. The guitars, like I mentioned, is definitely one of the cornerstones, one of the pillars of this album, and I love the guitar sound throughout the entire record. From the acoustic sound to the little bit more heavier side of their sound, the guitars definitely define a lot of what this album has to offer and are such a huge part of guiding the listener through these songs and through the individual experience of the songs, and also helping define what the overall experience of the album is all about. It's a great guitar sounding album without necessarily having that guitar sound be right in your face from the get-go. Being more subtle in the approach, being more subtle in the execution allows you to get a lot more from it, and it allows the atmosphere of the record to kind of grow from that guitar sound outwards. The drums on the album are also very interesting because I felt like they help give some soul to this record. They help fill in some of the gaps, and when the sound becomes a little bit thinner, the drums come in order to add some substance, in order to add some texture to it, not allowing the overall record to dissipate into thin air sound-wise, but rather creating some boundaries and definitely putting some restrictions on how far the sound can go before it starts to become a little bit more misty. Once it starts to become a little bit more misty, that's where the atmosphere starts to grow and develop. So the drums really have this ability to create the boundaries between where the core sound exists and where the atmospheric developments start to occur. That makes it an important element of the record, but not necessarily as focused on it or as an integral part of what drives it as much as the guitars do. Once you get into the vocals, the vocal dynamic between the harsh vocals and the clean vocals is extremely interesting throughout the entire record, really creating a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde experience from an album standpoint all around. The harsh vocals always come connected with a more intense sound, with a heavier and at times darker sound experience, which helps balance out the record really well. It doesn't allow the album to become lopsided and just be incredibly atmospheric, incredibly open, and not feel like at some point in time you have to hit the bottom. The harsh vocals really help define what that bottom is. It really helps define the darker side of the lighter sound, and I think that makes it gives the record a lot more energy, and it makes the record a lot more complete, because the vocals are not just working from a vocal standpoint, they're becoming almost an instrument that helps define the different sides and the different levels of atmosphere that the album has. When you get in the clean vocals always come with a more brighter, lighter sound, almost pop rock at times, very proggy as well in the texture and atmosphere that creates, but never completely disconnected between one and the other. The two, while different, while providing different outcomes and having different executions, work really well in parallel with one another to define the ebbs and flows of the songs and to really help define the tracks individually in terms of what they have to offer on a heavier side and on a lighter side. So it's a really interesting part of this album, because the vocals really have a defining impact on how the sound is perceived and the impact of the experience and atmosphere that comes from it, all around creating a super immersive record from top to bottom. This album is such a fun ride. It has so much energy, so much to give, and every time you listen to it, you feel like you're listening to it for the first time. It has that new vibe, new feel aspect to it that, in my opinion, adds incredible quality to it and adds also shelf life. This album is never going to get old. Doesn't matter if you're listening on the day of the release, doesn't matter if you're listening 10 years from now. It has that sort of quality of never losing what it has because of the quality that it has within it. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with forlis. This is the second track on the record, and I really like this song in terms of the dynamics that it offers. It really feels like a complete track. It feels like it has a sense of beginning, middle, and end. The harsh vocals, once again, help define the heavier side of the song, as they do help define the heavier side of the album. Musically, the track feels very balanced, because when the harsh vocals come in, the track gains a little bit more volume, but doesn't necessarily become heavier. It just has more volume. The cleaner vocals come in with a brighter, more cleaner sound, more stripped down sound, if you will, and a lot of the atmosphere of the track really breeds from that specific part of the track. That cleaner part creates a lot of atmosphere around this song. So I like the balance that exists between the two, and the impact that the two have in the sound has an impact in the atmosphere and in the experience. Great track, really balanced, even though it feels dynamic because of that harsh, clean vocal aspect that the track offers. Then you have a song like Dissonance. This is a track that has a very interesting aspect to it, because it starts off so warm with acoustic guitars, really layered, clean vocals. It just feels almost angelic. It has this haunting atmosphere, and the sound and the experience and the vocal performance, it's just really interesting. It grabs your attention immediately with its own simplicity, but it grabs your attention. Then the harsh vocals come in, and they kind of break that atmosphere and allow the song to go in a heavier direction, in a more intense direction, in a more aggressive direction. And the heavier sound that comes along with those harsh vocals together really start to define the song in a much different way. The track sheds that much lighter experience, more melancholic, haunting experience that it started off with, almost like if it was a skin. It sheds that skin, and it develops a much harder, heavier, harsher skin as it moves forward. It's a more guitar-focused track, and because it starts with acoustic guitars and moves into a much heavier sound, it allows the overall guitar sound to be very rich, very dynamic, a wide variety of sounds and experiences and executions, but putting a focus on the guitar sound from start to bottom really allows the track to be connected and stay connected, even though the experiences of the first half versus the second half are night and day from one another. Last but definitely not least, Mimic. This is one of the faster tracks on the record, pedal to the metal, almost, and I say almost from beginning to end, because there's a middle portion of this track that becomes incredibly melancholic. super atmospheric, melancholic. The guitar sound really breaks it, and it helps define this portion almost like a simmering effect. The track pauses, almost feels like it pauses. It allows the listener to wallow in this melancholic experience, in this haze that the song creates sonically, and then eventually returns to that heavier, more intense, more dark, more aggressive guitar sound with matching vocals. But it's a great track because of that break. That break is what defines the song, or is what helps define the song, because it also makes the faster movement of the track prior to it feel even faster once you go through the song once, and it makes the heaviness that comes after feel even heavier. That break defines the track, it helps cement the song, it gives it a sense of uniqueness to the track, and it really sets the song apart from everything else that the record has to offer. This is it. This is Dreamcrush by Mool. Once again, out January 30th on Nuclear Blast. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Hit me up in the comment section. I'll see you all at the next one. Take care, guys.